and not women. So these are all real important issues, which mean that men's health and their lifespan is reduced compared to women.
Well, let's put that to Harriet. That's a slightly more convincing case than I was thinking that might be able to be made for a Minister for Men. It's a good idea, isn't it?
But I think that what the Minister for Women and the positive action in relation to women is about unequal representation and women not having a voice at the table. All of those things that Minister has mentioned are important issues, but they're not something where the people who are running the organisations to do with health, violence, suicide, there's not an underrepresentation of men whereby men's voices can't be heard. Men are mostly running all the organisations and have got overwhelming political representation. And what we had was a whole problems in relation to women that nobody was articulating because women's voices weren't heard, and we are still very much a minority in public life.
I think that is true, particularly in public life. But there are issues where men are underrepresented. And I think back to a discussion we had a few weeks ago about domestic violence, and we highlighted domestic violence of women against men, which when I was on doing a paper review with Jackie Smith a bit later, and she laughed when I'd said that we'd been doing that. I said, why on earth are you laughing? This is a really serious issue. And we had actually more men ringing in who had been victims of domestic violence than women on that. And it is something that some people just don't take seriously, even despite the statistics that prove that it is a serious issue.
Well, I think any homicide has to be taken seriously. But the fact of the matter is that if you look at the homicide figures, overwhelmingly domestic violence is men against women, and those are the figures which are not subject to reporting errors or judgment about whether it is violence or it isn't. When you actually look at the number of people who've been killed in domestic violence, overwhelmingly it is men being killed by women. I mean, we got to be against violence in all respects, but it is a gendered issue. There's no doubt about it. I mean, once there was a survey which said that, that it was equally an issue, women's violence against men as men's violence against women. It isn't. That's just a fact. And actually, in the past, it used to be, it's a private thing. It happens behind closed doors. Who knows what happens between a man and his wife? She probably caused it. She deserved it. She probably provoked him. And we've had or it's only a domestic. And actually, we've had a big task to get the police, the prosecutors, the courts, the sentencing to take it seriously. And we've made a lot of very good progress. It doesn't mean it's not important if a woman murders her husband, but actually the big issue of protecting women from violence in relationships, we've made a lot of progress on.
Well, after the break, we might well talk about also the fact that the BBC have apparently issued an edict that they will always have to be a woman on a panel. Whether it's a comedy panel, a politics panel, there always has to be a woman. We might get a few calls on that. Lots of your calls coming in. 0845 6060 973 if you'd like to speak to Harriet Harman and ask her a question. You can also watch us on the LBC website at lbc.co.uk. Harriet is looking horrified at the prospect, but she's looking gorgeous tonight. It's 7:15.
There's some long queues out of town on the A4 tonight from the Hammersmith flyover all the way out to Chiswick at the Sutton Court Road exit. It's been caused by an earlier accident which did close the A4 out of town for a number of hours. Still slow as well on the M4 into town from the Heston services. The A40, you're queuing out of town there from the Marylebone flyover towards Hanger Lane after the closure of the A4 earlier. In Finsbury Park, Blackstock Road's closed both ways at Rock Street. That's for repairs to a burst water main. The A2, queuing out of town from the Woolwich Road flyover towards the South Circular Road in Eltham after an accident. Further afield, the M2 in Kent, that's still closed both ways between Junction 5 at Sittingbourne and Junction 6 at Faversham. That's for emergency repairs on a large sinkhole which has appeared in the centre of the road. Long queues there back to Junction 4 at Gillingham and also from Junction 7 at Brenley Corner. As a result, the M20 is very slow heading away from town. Keeping you moving, your next travel update is in 15 minutes.
LBC Travel
with GoToMeeting. Avoid those delays by meeting online from anywhere.
Ian Dale at Drive on LBC.
With the RAC, keeping you motoring this winter.
Darling, do you remember that man who used to be on the radio for Galliard Homes? You mean the chairman of Galliard Homes, London's regeneration specialists?
Yes, they have a great new development, Royal Gateway London E16. Looks like a phenomenal opportunity to invest in London.
With uninterrupted views of the river and the Royal Docks?
Stop it, darling. This is an all-private development. The apartments have superb specifications and excellent transport links with Canary Wharf and City Airport less than 7 minutes away.
What about Galliard's unbeatable value with one-bedroom apartments costing from under £250,000, potentially 20% less than the competition?
Darling?
Don't miss this exciting opportunity at our sales weekend on February 14th, 15th and 16th at the Crowne Plaza Hotel XL. Call 020 7620 1500 or visit galliardhomes.com. That's galliardhomes.com.
Introducing Pop School by The Times, the brand new music compilation chosen by our leading music writers. A mega mix of the best pop songs of all time, featuring the top 20 best bands, vocal performances, epic love songs, the finest guitar solos, and memorable lyrics. Bringing you the ultimate top 100 in pop. Get your guides to the best of pop music. Free inside The Times today and continuing all this week.
Upload your business video free to Ding Video, Britain's newest business video directory. Ding Video. At dingvideo.com.
Galliard's Royal Gateway Apartments, 5 minutes from Canary Wharf. Unrivaled specification and views. Unbeatable value from £250,000. Visit galliardhomes.com.
Ian Dale at Drive on LBC.
It's 18 minutes past 7 here on LBC. If you go to lbc.co.uk, you can watch us live on our webcam. Harriet Harman is here. She's the Deputy Leader of the Labour Party. I didn't really need to tell you that, did I? But that is her official title. And you are Shadow Minister for
Culture,
Media and Sport and Women's Issues?
No, I just support all the other people working on women's issues as well.
Just on that, before we come to the calls, the BBC have announced that they are going to enforce a rule where there has to be a woman on any panel, particularly on comedy shows, but presumably they also mean political shows. Is this a sign that women are never going to get an equal chance unless big organisations actually impose rules like this? Should this sort of thing be done in the city? Should it be done in Parliament?
Well, I think, all power to the BBC's elbow on this, and I think that they'll set the path that others will follow, and it's kind of regarded as, no doubt, as a bit kind of politically correct and controversial, but I think soon the BBC having done it, everybody will wonder if there are all male panels elsewhere. So I think that once you break down those barriers, it then becomes common sense.
I'm just trying to think who we've got in the LBC Parliament this week. I better make sure there is at least one woman. We have had 3 women on our panels before, so I don't know why I sound defensive. Right, let's go to your calls. Johnny is in Shooters Hill. Hello, Johnny.
Hello, yes. Two things I'd like to ask Harriet, actually. The first thing is how she views bullying in Parliament. The second thing is if she thinks that politicians who leave a scene of accident should actually resign. Going back to the first point, go back to the last reading of the abortion bill when it was planned to be lowered. There was a certain politician who published in the Quality Press, and she didn't sue the Quality Press. When they were going into the vote, she said to people, if you vote in favour of a lowering of the abortion limit, your life's going to be made hell.
Who said that?
I just want to know a comment. Well, it's reported Harriet Harman did in the Quality Press several years ago.
Right, well, let's put that to Harriet. Did you say that?
No, it doesn't sound like me at all. I was supposed to be saying this to other MPs. Was I? I'm always trying to persuade them, never threaten them.
Why didn't you sue the newspapers, Harriet?
Well, that's a very good question in relation to loads of things that have written about me in the newspapers. But honestly, I tell you what, Johnny, is that I've never felt that I could be saying to an MP, "I'll make your life hell." I just don't have that attitude towards them.
Some whips do, though, don't they?
Well, I don't know. You have to get them on your show, but I would never say that. It's kind of arrogant, overbearing. I've got no right to make anybody's life hell. I've got a right to put an argument. Sorry?
Were you unaware of it? It was published in the Quality Press?
Well, it might well have been published in any press, but, I'm telling you, I've had the opportunity to tell you and anybody else who might have read that, that's just not the sort of thing I ever would say, and I didn't say it. I just would not say it.
It's very hard to believe the fact that you didn't sue. Also, coming on to the second point, when you have a car accident, are you aware that it's a road traffic offence to leave a scene of an accident without leaving your name and address? You actually got out of your car and you said very smugly, "You know who I am," and drove off. I mean, who do you think you are?
Oh, well, okay, so this is a long story. Basically, there was a fire in Lakanal House in my constituency, and 6 people died in the fire, and I rushed to it to see and support the work of the fire services, all the tenants who were being evacuated. And there was a little road next to the fire which had a rescue centre in it, and it was a night of absolute drama and tragedy. And I parked near this this place, which was a reception centre where people were being put to, bedding down for the night because the whole block was evacuated. And as I pulled out into the road, which in fact was a blocked off road anyway, I did a small bump on a parked car in front of me at a time when my phone rang and I picked it up. But when somebody came out of their house and said, "You bumped into my car," I was reassuring this person that I was not actually going to disappear. There wasn't a bump there wasn't a dent on their car anyway, but I was kind of reassuring them. It wasn't like, "Oh, don't you know who I am?" It was a reassuring thing, which is, don't worry, you don't have to worry that I will be disappearing off because I'm the local MP. It was that way I was saying it. And anyway, yes, don't I know it's offence? Yes, it was an offence, and I did get prosecuted, and I did get fined, and I did get banned, and apologised. But the idea that I would be arrogantly saying, "Don't you know who I am?" That's just not the way I do it. What was your question about bullying in Parliament? I've got rather a sense that you're thinking that I'm doing the bullying in Parliament rather than being the victim of it.
I think we've covered that. Thank you, Harriet.
So not guilty, Johnny, generally speaking, except for the motoring.
Well, that was a nice introduction, wasn't it? Let's go to Mike, who's in Chelsea. Mike, have you got a slightly sort of less tricky question?
Yeah, much less tricky. There was an article in yesterday's New York Times, incredulous that 750 trade union members could hold to ransom 10 million Londoners. And I just wondered how Harriet could countenance her supportive views that she expressed on Question Time last week, supportive of the strike, how she could countenance that with her...
I think you're confusing Harriet with Tessa Jowell, actually, Mike, because Tessa was on Question Time last week, not Harriet.
Sorry, I think you're right. Well, you're absolutely right. I'm terribly sorry. What I mean then is that the Labour Party supports the strike, and when we should be looking towards a new vision towards the underground, a ticketless vision and a modern vision which allows better running of the trains at the weekend and at night time.
It's an interesting question because in any strike, the Labour Party is in a slightly difficult position. Ed Miliband, I think I'm right in saying, I've seen actually said the strike was wrong and that it shouldn't be happening. What's your position on the tube strike?
Well, the last thing we want is a tube strike with people having to absolutely tear their hair out trying to get the work and the whole of the city of grinding to a halt. We are not in favour of strikes, but we're in favour of the unions and representing the people who work in the service and the managers agreeing and coming to an agreement and a settlement. Yes, of course, there's got to be progress and things have massively changed on the tube and of course will carry on changing. But at the end of the day, what you've got here is a failure to agree. It takes two sides to disagree and it takes two sides to agree. And therefore, really, the focus should be on pressurising all sides to come to a decent agreement. But you can't simply say, "Oh, well, whatever any management says, that's fair enough," and that people at work have got no right to protest about that. That's, we live in a free country. So I'm not in favour of strikes. I'm against it. But I'm in favour of strikes being avoided by people reaching an agreement. And I don't want to sit here in judgment and blame one side. I want both heads to be knocked together and a solution to happen, which in fact we've now got a solution, I hope.
sort of a solution. Well, at least it isn't happening. One of our callers, I think yesterday, suggested that if the Mayor of London had been female and the leader of the RMT had been female, we wouldn't be where we are.
Well, I think that, I don't want to accuse either side of being in favour of a strike, but they certainly failed to avoid it first off.
Your colleague Emily Thornberry said it was macho nonsense and willy waving.
Oh. Who was doing that?
Emily, she was saying that's what Boris Johnson was doing, and Bob Crow to an extent.
Well, I think that it's a pity that they didn't get together and reach the agreement earlier, but they've done that. They've done that now.
Very diplomatic. John is in Bournemouth. Hello, John.
Good to hear you around the country. It's long overdue.
Thank you very much. What would you like to ask?
I'd just like to ask Harriet if she's got any idea how much she thinks it costs the state to support single-parent households.
Do you have an idea?
No.
I think that basically what you're talking about with single-parent households is you're talking about a household where you've got a child, but the man is not supporting the child and the mother is looking after the child and not able to go out to work. And I don't know the exact figure, but you know what the solution to it is because actually people who are taxpayers don't want to have to be paying for a child that's got a father. The father should be in work. He should be contributing to his child. And if the mother can go out to work because she's got a nursery to put her child in while she goes out to work, that's what should happen. But John, what do you think should happen with single parents?
Well, I think it would be much better had the governments in the 1980s taken what the Father's Rights campaign has said, because we now do have a generation of endemic fatherlessness. We have with children losing out because they're lacking father figures. It's adding to crime figures, and that's what exactly people like F&F and even Fathers for Justice said in the 90s. And now, unfortunately, the state is reaping the benefits of it. It's much easier to have supported genuine dads and made them models.
Well, I'm in favour of fathers supporting their children, but
I think the point that he's making is that we have a system now where often the system prevents fathers from even seeing their children, even if they're paying for them.
OK, it's not the system that prevents fathers seeing their children, and the courts would, when they make a decision and they are independent, they actually look at all the circumstances and they decide what's in the best interest of the child, and that has got to be the right thing. And mostly they will bend over backwards to make sure that the child has the opportunity and the right to see both their parents. Are you
not concerned though about the family courts, some of these secret courts that are coming up with some seemingly bizarre decisions according to some of the newspapers?
Well, I think that if you only hear a snippet of the reporting, the judgments can sound very bizarre, and that's why I've always argued that we should have much more openness in the family courts, not invasion of privacy of the child and naming of the mother and the father, but at least anonymous reporting. This is the justice system. People are entitled to see the decisions that are being made in their name and in the name of the justice system of this country. But my own sense is that the courts do bend over backwards to try and ensure that the child has the opportunity to see both parents, and only as a last resort will actually order the child not to be able to see the father. Now, I think they're not as good as they should be at making sure, if they make an order, that the child should see the father. If the mother tries to frustrate that order, I don't think the courts are good enough at enforcing that. But that's a different matter.
We are halfway through our hour. Some interesting questions, some tricky questions so far. We've got 30 more minutes to go. If you'd like to ask Harriet Harman a question, the number to call 0845 6060 973. This is LBC. It's 7:30 news time. And Simon Conway has the news headlines.
David Cameron has warned that the flooding situation may well get worse before it gets better, as more rain is forecast throughout the week. The Prime Minister's promised that money is no object in providing relief to communities affected by the floods. Police say a dog which mauled an 11-month-old baby to death in Blackburn last night was prohibited under the Dangerous Dogs Act. The baby's mother and her boyfriend have been arrested on suspicion of manslaughter. Detectives in South London have launched a murder investigation after a pensioner owner died following a suspected break-in. Police say they think the man collapsed after two men broke into his home in Tooting this lunchtime. In the business news, Barclays has pushed up staff bonuses by 10% despite seeing both revenue and profit fall. The bank's annual results for 2013 reveal it'll pay £2.4 billion in incentives, but the company also intends to cut 7,000 jobs in the UK this year. A planned 48-hour strike on the London Underground, which was due to start later tonight, has been called off. Unions and Transport for London officials came to an agreement over ticket office closures and job losses. And people looking to get on the property ladder are being told Aberdeen is the most cost-effective place to buy a home in Britain. A survey suggests if you put down a 10% deposit on a home in the city, you would be better off than someone who rents after just 1 year. And in the city, the FTSE closed up 81 at 66.72.
LBC Business
With cyberstreetwise.com, the first step to protecting your company from online fraud.
And the weather, largely dry and clear at first tonight for London and the southeast. Later, occasional sleet, snow or hail. Across the UK, breezy or cold with further wintry showers, turning frosty and a risk of ice. Temperatures as low as 1 degree. LBC News Time, it's 7:32.
You expect delays towards town on the M4 tonight. An accident is blocking the outside lane between junction 7, the A4, and junction 6 for Slough and Windsor. Some long queues there with delays of well over 30 minutes to get through the queues. Finsbury Park, Blackstock Road, that remains closed both ways at Rock Street for repairs to a burst water main. Now, flooding still a serious issue tonight. A number of major roads remain closed, including the A22 Godstone Road in Purley. That's closed between Downs Court Road and Whiteleaf. At Runnymede, Windsor Road, the A308 also closed both directions between the Egham Bypass and Old Windsor. On the trains, First Great Western services in and out of Paddington delayed by up to an hour towards Berkshire and Oxfordshire because of flooding. South West trains, they're being replaced by buses between Staines and Windsor and Eton Riverside because of flooding. And Southern services disrupted in and out of East Croydon because of a landslide between Woldingham and Oxted. Keeping you moving, your next travel update is in 15 minutes.
LBC Travel
With gotomeeting.co.uk. Stay inside and avoid delays by holding your meetings online.
Ian Dale at Drive on LBC.
With RAC Accident Care. They'll take the strain should the worst happen this winter.
Darling, do you remember that man who used to be on the radio for Galliard Homes?
You mean the chairman of Galliard Homes, London's regeneration specialists?
Yes, they have a great new development, Royal Gateway London E16. Looks like a phenomenal opportunity to invest in London.
With uninterrupted views of the river and the Royal Docks?
Stop it, darling. This is an all-private development. The apartments have superb specifications and excellent transport links with Canary Wharf and City Airport less than 7 minutes away.
What about Galliard's unbeatable value with one-bedroom apartments costing from under £250,000, potentially 20% less than the competition?
Darling?
Don't miss this exciting opportunity at our sales weekend on February 14th, 15th and 16th at the Crowne Plaza Hotel XL. Call 020 7620 1500 or visit galliardhomes.com. That's galliardhomes.com.
Every year, 1 in 4 people experience a mental health problem. At LBC, we've teamed up with Time to Change to bring you a special report on mental health. You don't have to be an expert to talk about it. We'll look at how small things can make a difference to someone you know. Listen all week and find out more at lbc.co.uk. It's time to talk. It's time to change.
With BMW Economics, you can get a BMW 318D Sports Saloon with a 6.5-inch colour display screen, sports seats and 17-inch alloy wheels for just $309 a month. It makes you wonder why anyone would pay $309 a month and not choose a BMW. For details of your local dealer, visit bmw.co.uk. 48-month hire agreement from BMW Financial Services, 4779 initial payment subject to status, UK only. Guarantees may be required. Mileage and other conditions apply. Offer ends 31st of March 2014.
Galliard's Royal Gateway Apartments, 5 minutes from Canary Wharf. Unrivaled specification and views. Unbeatable value from £250,000. Visit galliardhomes.com.
Ian Dale at Drive on LBC.
25 to 8 here on LBC. Harriet Harman is with me, Deputy Leader of the Labour Party, taking your calls, answering your questions. If you'd like to look at us as well as listen to us, you can go to lbc.co.uk, and we're being streamed live on the website. Apologies for my lack of tie, bearing in mind Sir Michael Wilshaw's comments about scruffy teachers. Now, if you would like to ask Harriet a question, the number to call 0845 6060 973. You can text your questions to 84850 or tweet us at LBC. Luke in Farnham says, what are Harriet's thoughts about the war on drugs and Nick Clegg's comments last week? It's the most sense he's ever spoken, says Luke. It is a vexed issue, isn't it? Because the war on drugs, if it is a war, is not being won. It can never be won. So surely there ought to be a Royal Commission to look at what we should do about drugs policy.
Well, I think that what we do about drugs policy is continuously kept under review, and by all the services, the health service, the education service, as well as the police and the courts. And I don't think there is any one simple, easy answer. But I think that we don't need to sort of stop doing things, sit back and have a massive royal commission that is going to suddenly find the answer. We've just got to keep working on it across all the services, everybody working together.
Ruth in Watford says, don't take any rubbish, Harriet. Women need you in Parliament and you're there. My money's on you in a political fight. Let's go to Simon in Kensington. Hello, Simon.
Oh, hello.
Hi, what's your question?
I just want to ask Harriet her take on a man being named in court for sex offences before the verdict was announced. I mean, this happened to a friend of mine, and I want to know her take on this, if he should be named. And not the female, of course, he's not named.
Okay, Simon.
Okay. Well, in this country, there's a very important principle, which is that justice must not only be done, but be seen to be done. And that's why our courts sit in public. And if the police arrest somebody, they get named. And that's always been the principle. And I think that, painful though it is for people who are accused of something, stand trial and then are acquitted, I think it is essential that you have a public system of justice so we can see what's actually going on. Now, there has been an argument, which perhaps Simon's referring to, which is that for sexual offences, should the accused person be kept anonymous? And I think that would be wrong for two reasons. Firstly, because you can't have a separate rule for sex offences, which is based on the assumption, presumably, that if it's a sexual offence, the victim is more likely to be lying, and therefore you should protect the defendant because he's more likely to get off. You can't say that about sexual offences and separate it out, because that would be sending a signal for juries and the courts that really they shouldn't be taking it seriously. And secondly, the truth is that once somebody, and it's been announced that they're accused of a sexual offence, quite often other people who have been victimised by that same person find that they've got the courage to come forward and they think that something might be done about it, and then they do come forward, and then that adds to the picture that the court can see. And that's the way that many sexual offences have been convicted that might otherwise the perpetrator might have gone free. It's a terrible thing whether you're accused of money laundering or robbery, to be standing trial, to have all the accusations put against you in public, and then you weren't guilty. But that, unfortunately, is the system, and I don't think there's any better way of doing it.
Simon, quick response.
Yeah, well, yes, it may be true with certain cases, robberies and other, and counterfeit and things like that. When it comes to sexual offences, people take a different view. Now, it happened to a friend of mine, and he lost his job, he lost everything. And it was just revenge from his ex-girlfriend. Completely. Not named, not nothing. And all she got was, I think, a suspended 3-month sentence or something. His life was...
So what you're saying is effectively, even if you're found not guilty, mud sticks and it ruins the reputation. I mean, I think this is probably one, Harriet, where there is no perfect solution here. If you went down the road that Simon's suggesting and actually had full anonymity for people accused of any sexual offence, that probably would have some pretty devastating consequences for people coming forward.
Yes, and for the reasons I set out, that I don't think that should happen. But it sounds to me as if the woman who was accusing Simon's friend of this offence was herself prosecuted for making a false allegation. So it must have been a very bad case. It wasn't just that the jury didn't find it proved beyond reasonable doubt. They actually thought it was malicious. And he shouldn't have lost his job if actually the accuser was maliciously making complaints and herself has been prosecuted. So obviously an injustice has happened to your friend in relation to his employment, and he should be getting his job back.
Right, let's move on. Mason is in Kingston. Hello, Mason.
Hello. Yes, I wanted to ask Harriet what she thought about the Equality and Human Rights Commission. I think she did a great job in bringing in the commission, but I think with the fact that the government has removed so many of its powers, and the government has stripped it of its budget. It now has a budget of about £20 million. And I wonder what she thought about whether the commission will ever be able to fulfil the sort of mandate that it should be dealing with.
What was its budget before then? £20 million sounds a lot to most people.
It used to be 70 million.
70 million.
And but that included lots of things, funding for many other organisations. Right. So, but that was removed from it, and I just wondered what Harriet thought, because now the organisation is really invisible. It isn't dealing with some of the issues one would have thought it should be dealing with.
OK, well, let's put that to Harriet. I mean, Mason's got a point there. In that, Trevor Phillips, when he was head of the Equalities and Human Rights Commission, we all knew who he was. I couldn't tell you who was the head of it now. Maybe that's just my ignorance.
Well, no, it isn't. Actually, you're right. It has gone very quiet. And is that because there is not a problem of discrimination against gay people, that women have equality, that there's no such thing as race discrimination? Absolutely not. All of those problems, although we've made progress on all of them, still remain. And there's still discrimination against people with disabilities. So it's really disappointing that the Equality and Human Rights Commission has gone so quiet. But I'm sorry to say that what seems to happen, there's a pattern here, that when the Conservatives are in power, the quest towards a more equal society and social justice is like closed down, swept under the carpet. And I think that Britain is a better place where if everybody gets fair treatment and a fair crack of the whip, and it's part of being a civilised society. So I think it's a pity. I agree with Mason.
Do you not think its budget would have been cut if you had been returned to power in 2010 just because of the general economic situation?
Well, it might well be, but that doesn't explain why it's gone completely quiet and why you don't know who the chair of the
maybe the chair is just rubbish at PR. I don't know.
Well, I think that, if we had the equality...
Who is it? Who's the chair?
Nora O'Neill. But basically, we would, and when I was Minister for Equality, I would expect the chair of the Equality and Human Rights Commission to be out there, sometimes criticising me and criticising the government, because you have to be pointing out where there's problems in order to make progress. So I think it's a pity that they've put all these issues of equality on the back burner, and anybody who wants greater rights towards equality for disabled people or ending discrimination against older people, it's very important to have these things highlighted.
We've got a minute before we go to the travel. I'm going to ask you this question purely because quite a few people have mentioned it on email. Chris the cabbie is one of them. He says, if Harriet Harman is for all women shortlist for safe Labour seats, why did she make an exception for her husband?
Well, even I don't agree that there should be 100% all women shortlists. I don't know whether that's a proposal. If it is, I'll have to consider it. But actually, we've had 50% all women shortlists. And so the other 50%, work it out, are men.
Was going to be an all women shortlist, wasn't it?
No, and then I took no part in the process of that because, with my husband going for it, I stepped right outside for that. But, if we've got 50% all women shortlists, the other 50%, men can apply, same as women. And we've got, I don't apologise for all women shortlists because actually it's been the only way we've managed to get women into Parliament so women can speak up.
Well, we're getting a tremendous response on the phone lines, which is great. 0845 6060 973. We have 15 more minutes for you to put your questions to Harriet Harman. You can watch us on the LBC website, lbc.co.uk. This is LBC. It's 7:45.
This is Adam Moore in the LBC Travel Centre. On the roads, delays towards town on the M4. There's an accident blocking the outside lane between junction 7 for the A4 and junction 6 for Windsor. Long queues there, delays of around 40 minutes on the approach. In Finsbury Park, Blackstock Road, that's closed both ways at Rock Street for repairs to a burst water main. Flooding still a serious issue. A number of major roads closed tonight. The A22, Godstone Road in Purley, that's closed between Downs Court Road and Whiteleaf. And at Runnymede, Windsor Road, the A308 also closed due to flooding between the Egham Bypass and Old Windsor. On the trains, First Great Western services in and out of Paddington delayed by up to an hour towards Berkshire and Oxfordshire because of flooding. South West trains replaced by buses between Staines and Windsor and Eton Riverside because of flooding as well. And Southern services disrupted in and out of East Croydon because of a landslide between Woldingham and Oxted. Keeping you moving, your next travel update is in half an hour.
LBC Travel.
With GoToMeeting. Avoid those delays by meeting online from anywhere.
Ian Dale at Drive on LBC.
With racshop.co.uk. Keep motoring this winter with over 80,000 parts and accessories.
Darling, do you remember that man who used to be on the radio for Galliard Homes?
You mean the chairman of Galliard Homes, London's regeneration specialists?
Yes, they have a great new development, Royal Gateway London E16. Looks like a phenomenal opportunity to invest in London.
With uninterrupted views of the river and the Royal Docks?
Stop it, darling. This is an all-private development. The apartments have superb specifications and excellent transport links with Canary Wharf and City Airport less than 7 minutes away.
What about Galliard's unbeatable value with one-bedroom apartments costing from under £250,000, potentially 20% less than the competition?
Darling?
Don't miss this exciting opportunity at our sales weekend on February 14th, 15th and 16th at the Crowne Plaza Hotel XL. Call 020 7620 1500 or visit galliardhomes.com. That's galliardhomes.com.
Dear hard work, you drag us out of bed every morning and keep us awake at night. The aches and pains remind us just how real you are. You push us to the limits. Every day you pose new challenges. But we rise to all of them. We are Vito, Sprinter, and Citan from Mercedes-Benz Vans. From only £199 per month. Offer ends 31st of March. Search for Citan, £199. Business users only, based on a Citan 109 long, 36-month agility agreement, plus deposit, optional purchase payment, and fees. Conditions apply. Credit by Mercedes-Benz Finance UK.
New Year's resolutions? You know you won't keep up the gym. And the chalky biscuits are just too tempting. But one resolution you can keep is to fix your gas and electricity prices with British Gas. So you know where you stand until May 2015. You'll get a £70 gift card to spend on the high street. And unlike some fixed deals, you won't pay a premium. To switch, just call 0800 980 3993 today. Or visit britishgas.co.uk/gift card. Conditions apply, ends 28th of February 2014.
Galliard's Royal Gateway Apartments, 5 minutes from Canary Wharf. Unrivaled specification and views. Unbeatable value from £250,000. Visit galliardhomes.com.
LBC 97.3. Coming up at 8, Clive Bull.
A key independent report says Britain's nuclear deterrent is irrelevant to any existing or foreseeable threats posed by foreign states, and we need an urgent public debate on the issue. At an estimated cost of £100 billion over its lifetime, should we be spending money on Trident?
London's biggest conversation with Clive Bull this evening at 8. LBC 97.3.
It's 11 minutes to 8 here on LBC. Harriet Harman is with me taking your calls, 0845 6060 973. We've had quite a few emails, so shall we have a quick email quick fire round here? So short answers if we can. My name is Louise and I'm in the process of hopefully starting up my own business. Under the current administration, I'm comfortable doing this as there's a lot of support for new businesses. I sent an email to your colleague Chuka Amuna before Christmas, but so far he hasn't responded. Also, your other colleague Ed Balls has just announced the reintroduction of the 50p tax rate if your party wins the next general election. Given this recent announcement, it's making me reconsider my decision to go into business, so I'd like to know what support the Labour Party has for women in business.
Well, the 50p tax rate, which is important to try and help get the deficit down, is only for income over £150,000. So Louise would be earning over £150,000 before she actually had to pay anything. And I think that it's very important for the government to support businesses, big and small, and that's why one of our proposals is to cut the business rates. A lot of small businesses find that they're paying as much in their business rates as they are in their rent. So we've suggested postponing a proposed cut in corporation tax, which the Conservatives have been proposing, and saying no, instead use that money for small business, which is a massive engine for growth.
Pat says, what are you doing about getting the tube into Camberwell? Which, if you're listening in Edinburgh, is in South London, in your constituency.
Yeah, we're much better off than we were in transport because we got loads more buses. But yeah, we do miss the tube in South London. But there's more lines coming, and we're pressing on with it. We've got ironically, we've got somewhere called Camberwell Station Road, which hasn't got a station in it, where the trains just whiz past but doesn't actually stop. So it's a big frustration. Right, let's go to Elizabeth in Swiss Cottage. Hello, Elizabeth.
Oh, hello.
Hi, what's your question?
Yes, first of all, I want to thank Harriet very, very much for sticking up for women. I've really appreciated it. You just can't imagine. I really want to know where she stands personally on Europe, or the business with Europe.
In what respect? Whether we should have a referendum, do you mean?
Yes, and what she feels herself. I'd like to know her take on it.
OK, Elizabeth?
Well, I think that there's a very big economic argument for us to stay in Europe. So I'm in favour of us staying in Europe because it's a very big export market for us. And us being part of Europe, it makes it easier for us to attract investment in from the rest of the world and to export our goods out to the rest of the world. So I'm very much in favour of Europe. I think that as far as a referendum is concerned, there's a lot of changes going on at the moment. And I think that we've said that if there was a big change that transferred power to Europe away from this country compared to what the situation is at the moment, at that stage there would be a referendum. But right now I think what we should be doing is aiming for some changes in Europe, but I don't think we should be having a referendum. What do you think about it, Elizabeth?
Well, basically I always had a French passport and I've always kept it, even though I live here. But I get frightened of the fact that it's not basically very democratic. I get frightened of the fact that it might be kind of linked to corporate globalization bit by bit. I don't seem to be able to trust it completely.
I mean, I think Elizabeth speaks for a lot of people there. Is it a danger for the Labour Party going into the next election with the Conservatives promising a referendum, an in-out referendum, and Labour not doing so? Because there seem to be a lot of northern voters who are being attracted by UKIP at the moment. And we hear a lot about Conservative voters in the south slipping away to UKIP. Is that not a danger for Labour in the north?
Well, I don't think on a very big issue, which is so fundamental to so many jobs in this country, which is our membership of the EU, the idea that we make a sort of tactical swerve because we're worried about UKIP. I think we've got to say what we think is right, argue our case, and ask for people's support and for vote for us on that basis. But I can completely agree with Elizabeth about the sense that decisions in Europe are not sufficiently accountable and that it's too remote. So I do think that is a very important criticism which we need to be, tackling. But I think the thing about UKIP is it's really people just, I think quite a lot of the time, just having a general protest that they feel all the main parties are out of touch. And that's a challenge to us to make sure that people know that we are on their side and we do understand their concerns.
Do you understand why people think that? Why people have become so disillusioned with the three main political parties?
Well, I think it's not surprising when there's been such a big global financial crisis and people think that politicians have got into government, broken their promises, don't understand their lives. And I do think that the fact that the Conservatives and Lib Dems got in and broke a whole load of promises has not only affected trust in them, but also trust in politics generally. So it's very important for us to show, and that's what we've done, for example, with the energy bills, that we understand that people are feeling up against it with the cost of living, and we are going to freeze their energy bills, and we are listening, and we're out and about in local communities. And I think we should never take people's support for granted.
Let's go to Ben in Haringey. Hello, Ben.
Hello. Hello. I'm a bit of an anorak about your Public Accounts Committee and the excellent chairing you do of that committee.
That's Margaret. That's Margaret Hodge. Honestly, we've had someone mistake Harriet for Tessa Jowell. You're now mistaking her for Margaret Hodge.
But Ben should say what he thinks about the Public Committee.
Tell us what you think of Margaret Hodge.
Margaret Hodge.
Well, she's a good friend of yours, isn't she?
Yeah.
Anyway, the question, I've got two questions, if I'm allowed. One of them is, what do you think about the latest government proposals on legal aid? And justice has now got a price tag, and the ordinary person in the street, and it will mainly affect more percentage of women because of the earnings capacity that women have to get justice in this country. And the other one is about ATOS.
Well, let's do the legal aid one first, Ben. The government's legal aid proposals are very controversial. I got into a bit of a spat at the weekend on Twitter on this, and I've changed my mind. I used to think that well, barristers, they're all rich. They're actually not all rich, and some earn as little as £13,000 a year. And these proposals will actually, in some ways, restrict people's access to the law. Now, you used to be Solicitor General. You were a lawyer, weren't you?
I was. And I do think that the court process has got to be simplified so that it doesn't cost so much. But the truth is that we do pride ourselves in this country on people having access to justice. When many decades ago, when legal aid was first introduced, it covered 60% of the population. So if you were the top 40% of the population, you had to pay for yourself. But the other 60%, you would get access to the courts. Now, unless you're super rich or you're very, very poor, you don't have access to justice. And I think that is a really big problem. Can I just say something in response to Ben mistaking me for Margaret Hodge, who I just want to put in a big plug for what she's done on the Public Accounts Committee. And what she's identified is so much tax avoidance. Perhaps we wouldn't have to be cutting legal aid so much if some of these big global companies weren't moving all their money all around the globe in such a way as to not have to pay tax in this country, even when they make profits in this country.
Do I remember rightly that a Tory MP recently accused Margaret Hodge of actually jeopardising inward investment into this country because of all of her tax inquiries?
Well, I think they did, but and it was like an unnamed source from the Treasury. I think they would do much better listening to the evidence that comes out of her committee of big companies not paying their taxes when small companies and ordinary people at work have to pay their taxes. So instead of smearing her in an unnamed source, they should be listening to what she says. I think she's done a really good thing putting all of this on the agenda.
Well, Ben, we haven't got time to come to your second question. Now, Harriet, when you came into the studio, you said, I'm so nervous. Have you enjoyed the last hour? Will you come back?
Oh, well, yes. If people want to phone up and have me back, then I'd like to. I think it's a great show, and I'm really glad it's going nationally. And although I was a bit apprehensive, I like to hear the other politicians. I like to hear you giving them a bit of a roasting.
Well, I'm not sure that I've given you a roasting tonight, but we have Ed Balls on tomorrow for an hour taking your calls from 5. So we'll see what I can do with him. You've actually given me permission there, I think. So that's fine. Harriet Harman, thank you very much indeed. Well, I'm back tomorrow from 4, but if you missed any of today's show, you can listen again whenever and wherever you like through our new podcast service. Just download the app now. Later on LBC, Duncan Barks will be here from 10. But next, of course, it's Clive Bull.
Ian, thank you. And coming after the news, as David Cameron warns that the flooding crisis could get worse before it gets better, do you think the affected residents are partly to blame? Plus, a school in Norfolk has banned students from wearing skirts in a crackdown on immodest clothing. Is banning skirts going too far? And what about what the staff are wearing? Ofsted is launching a new clampdown on scruffy teachers. And after 9, the LBC Medical Hour and your health and medical questions to Dr. Peter Ilvis, who joins me in the studio. 0845 6060 973 is the number. From LBC, I'm Clive Bull, and that's all next.
On FM